If you're watching this on recording, then, this is an honor for me to be able to talk about this topic tonight. I'm sure Sandy, with our friendship and background, thought of insurance as a topic to share with you guys. And I would say this is a really cool opportunity because I didn't know anything about these topics we're going to go over tonight until I was much older. And there is a lot of things that would have benefited me had I known some of these things ahead of time. But it is very fascinating. I do this for a living. Insurance has been my career for the last 20 years. And there's this page, I just picked this out with tons of numbers. I thought that's kind of a weird picture for insurance. But honestly, if you really think about it, insurance, as I get into this and show you, it's just a lot of variables involving a lot of numbers, whether the numbers are for actual money to protect, or if numbers are crunching numbers and analytics and things to figure out how to price insurance or how to do things to make it affordable, all these different factors that run into insurance. But I've been doing this for 20 years. I've done life insurance. I've done what I do now is called property and casualty. If you go drive around, look around, you probably don't notice it, but there's insurance carriers all over the place. You've got State Farms and Allstate and Farmers, and then you've got tons of life insurance companies. There's thousands of insurance companies around. And, these are some of the brands that you might be familiar with that are out there that offer life insurance, offer auto insurance, home insurance, all different types of insurance. A lot of different companies that are into this, and they're not all equal. I'm going to come back to this slide in a second when I get into that. But the main thing is, what is it? What is insurance? So insurance is designed to prepare for the unknown. So you're preparing for the unknown. You're not sure what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen to our health. We don't know if we're going to end up having an accident in a car. We don't know if there's something that's going to happen to our home. These are all the unknowns, and it's risk. Unknowns are risk. And so insurance ultimately is there to provide protection. It's to provide that security against the unknown. So when bad things happen, insurance is really designed to make it not so bad. It's not perfect every time, but it's definitely to make it a lot easier on people's lives when bad things happen. Health insurance is out there for people with health. As we know, that's a big thing and a big topic right now. You get sick, that's expensive. So people can't afford to pay things out of pocket for everything that pops up in their life. Some things can be tragic. Death of a family member, serious injuries, your house burns down, hopefully no one was in it. But seriously, bad things can happen. And so insurance ultimately is there, and there's a whole industry because people and human beings do not like to take on risk unnecessarily unless, there's an option to take that risk away. Then generally people want that security. They want security. So insurance provides that, but it's not free. It's not free. I guess in some cases you can get insurance for free if you have a job and they provide that as a perk, but really it's just coming out of what they could have paid you in salary. So there's really no such thing as free insurance. And so we're going to talk about the different types. We're going to talk about different kinds. We're going to talk about why some of these insurance are in place, what impacts it, what interacts with your ages. I'm really going to I'm going to carve out a little bit more time to talk about auto insurance because car insurance will impact your life first, most likely where you'll have some impact or control in it. You'll have a play in how that takes place. So we'll go through the different kinds. Ultimately, there's many. You can insure anything. You can insure pets. We actually sell pet insurance. So if your dog got sick, we have credit insurance. You've got flood, you've got health, life, auto, home, business. If there's something that could be damaged, someone who you can get sued, anything like that, there's insurance for it. I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm just going to touch on a few. I'm really only going to touch tonight on life, auto insurance, and home insurance. Those are the only three I think for your age would be appropriate right now. There'll be some benefit to learning more about that. So back to the major brands, not all are equal. Not just something to plug away in the back of your head for the future, but your generation is so savvy when it comes to looking up and trying to determine whether something's good or not. You know how ratings are, look for the 4 stars, 5 stars if you buy something. So everything is that way nowadays, that pretty much if you're going to buy something, there's someone out there that's rated that to determine whether it's a good thing to put your money into, right? So insurance companies are very similar. They're rated. They're rated on a national level based on how responsible they are in terms of how they pay out to the consumer to take care of them. They're also rated individually. So like I own an insurance agency, and there's agencies down the street that do the same thing I do. If you look us up and you Google us, I've got 4.9 stars, very happy about that. 5 is the max. You can see other carriers or other insurance agents that may be like a 3.5 or 4. So just like you do in anything in your life, you're going to do the same thing with insurance. Just don't assume because it's saying that it's going to do something for you that it's ultimately going to do it, because there's a lot of fine print. If you know any lawyers, they look at the fine print. These are all contracts. And over the years, they've gotten more and more complex. So you definitely want to have professionals. That's why, people like me exist to guide adults. I have clients who are doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists. We're talking smart people. And they listen to me about their insurance because they don't want to think about it. They don't want to deal with it, or they've never been trained on it. And they trust people like me to give them guidance. The more you have, too, the more you have to lose in this world in terms of the material side. So insurance is a big play for that as well. But the law of large numbers ultimately, which is, I think, what makes this fun. So if you like math, what really drove me into insurance is I love statistics. I loved math and statistics, especially in college. And law of large numbers is an example, and this is a base discussion of education on insurance, because it starts here when you think about probability. We talked about the unknown. Insurance is to do what? It's to protect us against things that could happen that are unknown. Well, they're unknown on an individual basis, but they're not really that unknown on a large basis. So insurance companies can figure out how much they can charge somebody for an insurance policy. Doesn't matter what kind of policy it is. There's a cost associated with it. Well, what determines the cost? Well, it depends on what the losses are. Auto insurance has losses, home insurance has losses, life insurance has losses. But probability determines what price to put on insurance. And so the example here would be like a coin toss. If you take a coin and you say heads or tails, right? I could flip, maybe 4 heads in a row. Very rare. If you ever tried it, it's very hard to do more than maybe 2 or 3 in a row. But technically you could even do 10 in a row. But if you do 100,000 coin flips, you're typically going to find on every single one. They've done computer examples of this just for fun, just to show it, but randomized, and then they've done physical tests. But after 100,000, you're probably going to almost have exactly 50,000 heads and 50,000 tails. So there's only 2 possibilities, heads or tails. So you run those possibilities out over and over and over, and it eliminates a lot of the fluctuations. If we were going to just do 3, it's going to fluctuate 2 heads, 2 tails, or vice versa. It's going to disproportionately be more of 1 head or tail. But if you do 100,000, it's going to equal out. So I'll come back to that concept later when I'm talking about pricing, but that's fundamental to insurance, is probability. What could happen? And then the companies, they want to predict what could happen because they have to make a profit. So they have to charge enough to cover what their losses are probably going to be. So the first one of the 3 that I told you we would talk about is life insurance. So life insurance insures a person's life. Big deal for husbands, wives who have children, mom or dad pass away. What we're talking about here is they die. they leave behind bills. They could lose their jobs. Not to be all depressing for your children right now, but I'm just saying life insurance is a big deal. You're not going to really deal with this until you're probably getting your first job. Maybe your grandfather or maybe your parents put a life insurance policy on you. But in the future, life insurance will be a big deal. The main thing is just realize whatever financial responsibilities you have for other individuals, if you passed away, if that would negatively impact whoever is you're responsible for, life insurance is one of those great insurance policies because of the unknown. You want to live to be 120, but you don't know. And at some point you'll pass away. And so you want to make sure that whoever you're responsible for that you leave behind has enough money to protect the family. So just as an example on myself, I have 5 children. I have my wife. I'm the only one that's working right now. If something were to happen to me, that's a big deal. That would really impact their life dramatically. So what number did we come up for my life insurance? Well, we do an analysis to determine how much. There's not really a right number, but the wrong number would be nothing. 0 would be wrong. Right for me was, I think, $2 million. So I pass away, $2 million goes to protect my family. Just use that as an example. That they're going to have to live off that since I won't be able to work. Same thing with my wife, and then I also have insurance on all 5 of my children. That for them is a gift because I know someday down the road they're going to need it, so I hand it off to them. But I'm not going to talk a lot about life insurance because at your age, not really something that's going to come up. This will be something when you're an adult, get your first job, maybe get married. Definitely when you have responsibilities, especially when you have children. Got to protect your children. So home insurance is the next one. You're all sitting right now inside your house. And so bad things can happen to a home. Here's a list on the screen of all the different things that can happen to a home. It's not exhaustive, but majority of these things are what we insure our clients against, are fire and lightning, all these different things that can happen to your house. And your parents who either own the home or they're paying the bank to take care of the home, they have to have insurance if the bank owns it. So if they're paying the bank every month until they pay off the house and then own it, they're going to be required to have home insurance because if something were to happen, the bank's on the hook and they want to make sure that their interest is protected. If you own the home, well, that's kind of crazy not to insure where you live. So I'm going to tell you, everybody has home insurance with the exception of very, very few people. And it helps against tornadoes, wind damage. When you see damage to a house, that's expensive. So as an adult who has to take care of our house, that can be a stressful moment when you have damage to your home. Imagine a tree falls on it or wind blew all the shingles off the roof, or we had hail damage, and it started causing leaks into the house, or I think the other day I didn't have to file a claim, fortunately, but one of my children couldn't get something flushed down the toilet and just thought if they just kept doing it over and over and over again, eventually it would go down. Well, meanwhile, it's a waterfall in the bathroom, in the kitchen underneath, right? So water is coming down. That's a lot of damage, So home insurance helps protect against those big ticket item, expensive damages to your house to make sure that it's protected. And then, not that this will matter much to you at your age, but just so you know, maybe you just put this in the back of your mind. Just realize that homeowners insurance doesn't cover everything. There's certain things that you have to specifically get in addition. Flood insurance is one of them. Earthquakes, unless you ask for it, it won't be on there. Landslides, bigger deal out west, the mudslides. But yeah, one of the biggest things is that just because you have insurance in general doesn't mean it's equal to any policy that's out there. They're all going to be a little bit different, and they can be customized. Again, that's why going with people like myself or making yourself very educated on your own is very important on what kind of insurance you get. You can get insurance and think you're fine, and then you find out in the policy that they don't cover something, but it's very important. And then you have that loss. Something happens to your house that isn't covered. So being able to read policies, don't take it for granted. Spend a little bit of time, in the future, down the road, to just not take someone's word for certain things you want to read. Risks, children, you're here. So I sat down in your living room with your mother and your father going through their policy, and your mom asked all kinds of great questions, and was drilling us about different things that she wanted to know about in her policy. And that's what we like. We love talking to people that are they're going to be asking a lot of questions. So always be there to ask questions about things you don't understand. When it comes to insurance, the professional you're talking to can't answer those questions, it's probably a red flag. They shouldn't be doing what they're doing. The next one, which is a big one for you guys, is auto insurance. So auto insurance, with sometime between age of 15, you get a permit, to whenever you get your driver's license, that's the most immediate thing for all of you that's going to impact the beginning of you becoming an adult. Because how you handle becoming a responsible auto driver and what you understand about that could impact you personally, because it's going to be one of those first things that you're going to spend money on. So when we talk about insurance, this is the stuff that you're going to be spending your hard-earned money on for yourself sooner than anything else that we've been talking about. So I definitely want to go into auto insurance and talk more about this probably than anything for you guys tonight, because it's going to be more or less relative to you, more recent or current. So obviously no texting while driving. There's a lot of things that we're seeing now statistically with losses. You see all this self-driving cars, and you hear about all of the, mainly the self-driving cars, the smart cars, all this advancement in safety in cars is true. But right now what we're seeing is, despite all these new automations and safeties, auto insurance is going up in most places. And Georgia, I can tell you, it's gone up a lot. And if you look at how pricing has gone up, texting and driving has been the biggest factor of that, is that how many people are distracted driving. So as you guys get into where you're driving, some of you have smartphones, some of you don't. But definitely, please be very careful with that. One accident, one speeding ticket, getting pulled over, I think they're going to make these laws stricter and stricter over time with the texting. What's also interesting is girls and boys are different in their behaviors in terms of driving. So the top one is the boys. Have you noticed that 33,000 fatal crashes, this was taken out over the course of a year? And then you look at the statistics. So question to you, if we know that the middle one of the boys, fatal crashes, injured, property damage, and the total is more than what's at the bottom for the ladies there, who do you think is being charged more for their auto insurance? Right, so men generally are more dangerous drivers. It's just a statistic, but back to that law of large numbers, right? If you had 100 females and 100 males, and you don't know what they're going to do specifically, but collectively, men generally, or boys generally, are going to have more frequent and more severe accidents than females. So that's gonna relate to the cost of the insurance that you end up having to buy for your auto insurance policy. And so one of the cost factors I'm going to share with you is a big deal, because no one told me these things when I was getting into this. And it's really helped me now. I have very good insurance rates, but I've been doing this for 20 years and I knew what to do. So one of the things that will drive your rates especially is age. So the younger you are, that's a huge factor in how much they're going to charge you for your insurance. That's not your fault that you're young, but they look at you at 16 or however old you are. They look at every other 16-year-old in the entire country, and they say, okay, everyone at 16, they had X amount of accidents, and insurance companies had to pay out a certain amount. And then you compare that to, say, like someone in their 30s, and it's 3 times more for the 16-year-old than it is the person who's 35, because they're learning how to drive. They don't have experience yet. They're more likely to make mistakes. unfortunately, some of the texting and driving statistics are showing to be coming from that age group. So the insurance premium for a young person can be I've even seen as much as 5 times higher than it would be for someone my age with a clean record. So age is a huge factor. What you can do, you can't change your age. Can't change if you're a boy or a girl. But one thing you can do is drive safely, don't have accidents, don't get pulled over with speeding tickets. Other thing is credit. Believe it or not, this says 3%. I pulled this off the internet to get ready for our meeting, but I'm going to tell you right now, this must be dated because this 3% is very small on this graph, but it's actually closer. It can factor huge. So your credit, what is credit? That's whether or not you pay your bills on time. Believe it or not, if you get a credit card or student loan or any kind of bills in your name down the road, if you don't pay those on time, aside from the fact that you owe somebody money, you should be paying them. You shouldn't get into more debt than you can handle. But the main thing is that if you have good credit, it's actually going to impact your insurance cost. Because if I can run someone through the perfect credit and someone with very bad credit, and it could be a difference of 2 to 3 times in the insurance cost. So as you're young, establishing your credit, establishing good credit, driving safely, don't speed, that's going to help your credit. Also, what kind of car? I think what surprises me a lot of people that go out, they get excited on the car lot, they go buy something that they like, but they never actually bother to call a guy like me, for instance, to ask what would my insurance rate be? Same person, 16-year-old, perfect driving record, maybe starting with the credit, they drive. They're looking at maybe like a CRV, Honda CRV, and then they're looking at a Corvette that's souped up. Okay, which one do you think is going to be more to insure for a 16-year-old? The Corvette. So making good choices about what kind of car you're going to be driving, especially when you're young, could make a big difference in what you're going to end up spending on auto insurance. I'm going to open it up for some questions. I know this topic isn't something that's really involving you in your life right now, but I can tell you that auto insurance, especially when you get into that, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive. So your parents may cover that for you in the beginning until you can get out and get a job, but they're going to be really excited when you get off and start your own auto insurance policy. And so these things are going to definitely factor into helping you out with being able to afford it, for sure. And I know we've gone about 25 minutes. Anything that stick out to any of you when we're going through these slides that you want to know more about, or raises a question that you might be interested in talking about?
I have a question on house insurance. Why exactly do most insurance policies not cover floods, earthquakes, and landslides, but will cover other things that are?
Yeah, so the standard policy so there's a flood policy. So flood insurance is also covered and underwritten by a lot of policies by FEMA. Which, as you can imagine, the hurricanes brings in a lot of floods. So it's regulated a little bit separately than homeowners insurance. So you can add a flood policy to your homeowners policy. So you can cover that gap. I don't have a flood policy because I live kind of up on a hill. Typically, you would have to get a flood policy if you've taken a loan out from the bank, and the bank knows that your house is below like the 100-year flood line. They're going to make you get a flood policy. But maybe you own the house. Well, then no one's forcing you to get insurance at all. But floods can happen even if you're not below the floodplain. So we've had a lot of basements that get flooded because of drainage, and then their homeowner's insurance policy won't cover it. Water damage is expensive. Having to replace carpet and floors and drywall, very expensive. So we do recommend when we talk to our clients about flood, we ask them a lot of questions to make sure that they may or may not need that. Earthquakes, is just an endorsement. Insurance companies don't want to be on the hook for an earthquake. It's a rare event in a lot of areas. So they usually don't, there's not a lot of desire for the policy from the consumer. So instead of forcing everybody to have it, they just make it as an option. But a lot of people just assume that it would be covered, which is a big mistake. Again, know your policy and don't assume that that's just going to cover anything. That's not how it works. That's a good question.
You might have mentioned this and I missed it, but how much can they expect when their parents do choose to take them off of their insurance and they have to find their own? How much should they anticipate having to pay? I mean, I know it varies, of course.
The good news for all of you is back when I was saying that texting and driving's really impacted insurance rates, we are seeing the potential for a trend with Teslas being able to engage in self-driving. Other carriers are going to start, other car makers are going to start doing the same thing. So over the next 10 years, we're expecting to see auto insurance rates drop, start going down. Now, another thing is that we're trying to do is, we talked about the law of large numbers. Why are you getting treated like all their 16-year-olds when you're the responsible 16-year-old? I mean, you never text and drive. You always drive the speed limit. So a lot of these companies will do what's called like an app-based discount thing where they'll put an app on your phone, and if you touch your phone while you're moving, or if it actually runs stats on what kind of driver are you distracted driving. So if you don't do those type of negative things, you can get discounts, a lot of discounts in the youth. The biggest discounts we offer are for kids. The reason is because there's a huge difference between a responsible teenager and one that isn't. And if you're responsible, you definitely want to go with an insurance company that's going to respond to that. They have some way of measuring you compared to another 16-year-old. But the rates are generally going to cost, depending on if you buy a very old used car or if you get a nice new car. At your age, that could be anywhere between $150 a month up to, actually, a kid across the street, I think he's 20, and he pays $750 a month. But he has been in 2 car accidents with sports cars, and his 3rd car is another sports car. So he's paying $700 a month for his auto insurance, if you can believe it or not. But yeah, you should typically average for your auto insurance to be somewhere around $250 a month is going to be an average. Isn't that amazing? $250 a month. What could you just spend every month with $250? Isn't that crazy? Just to drive. It's not buying you anything. It's just for peace of mind. But if you wreck the car, then it's going to be fixed. So when you get older, the average in Georgia, where I live, in Tennessee wasn't much difference. It's about $450 a year per car for an adult, typically. So let's just say $500 a year per car. No, that's not right. It's $1,000 a year per car. $1,000 a year per car, typically for an adult. So that's what usually it is for a kid or a teenager. I shouldn't say kid. It's going to be between $2,000 to $3,000 per car per year. So pretty high.
Big difference.
So it's like, do you want the really flashy brand new car and pay $300 a month, or will you be willing to drive a slightly used car that's not brand new and save $150 a month? That could be some of those decisions that you may have to make with your parents.
And it sounds like those decisions are best made before they start driving, before they get the car, in order to proactively plan for the future. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do because the biggest discriminatory factor is your age. There's nothing you can do about that. All those other things that I mentioned is going to be a big deal. Just, yeah, establishing credit, that's going to be a parent-child discussion, but at some point, usually when they become of age, it's good for a parent to guide you through trying to establish credit before you go out on your own. That'll be useful to you, because that's gonna be with you the rest of your life. Your credit related to your auto insurance is going to be a part of your life forever. So having good credit, and most of your families, you come from extremely good credit. I mean, you come from a responsible environment where people pay their bills, but just know that there are consequences. And one of the consequences to not paying your bills on time is a really, really high insurance rate. That's for sure. And just driving safely. So typically around age 25, there's like the thought that it goes down. It's kind of a myth. I mean, it's not like a magic number when you turn 25. You can still get good rates in your late teens, early 20s, if you've got if you're getting all the discounts. Also, a big one that's not on, well, discounts that aren't on here, but taking driver's ed, very useful. That's huge. Driver's ed or any kind of safety course before you start getting your license, or right after you get your license, take one of those safety courses. It's worth it, because that'll save you 10, sometimes some companies 20% off. So imagine if your auto insurance is going to be $200 a month. I mean, wouldn't you like to save $40 a month for the next 3 years just because you took a class? Those classes, if your parents are suggesting or wanting or even telling you have to, do it for yourself. Do it for yourself if you're going to ever be paying for the insurance. And of course, you got to renew those about every 3 years. But that's one thing you have control over, is just to show that you're different than everyone else. You took time to take a class from a professional instructor about how to drive safely. And I'll be honest, those classes are really good, and they do help you, and you do learn a lot, and they are eye-opening, very useful.
Katie just recently took one of those classes, and I think that she learned a lot from it.
I have had so many speeding tickets in my life that the judge would say, if you take this course, we'll take it off your record, young man. And so for years, I never had a single speeding ticket on my record, because I kept opting to take the classes. And every single time, it terrified me just a little bit more, until finally I stopped speeding and got my act together. But those tickets, wow, speeding tickets are really expensive nowadays. If you're in the wrong place, going the wrong speed, I mean, that could be $300, $400, $500 just for a speeding ticket. If you get caught texting and driving in Georgia, I think it's like $50, and it goes up to something like $250 per occurrence. You can lose your license. I mean, you have to have a license to drive. It's a privilege. It's a privilege, and you can lose that privilege if you're not responsible. I am going to take some time and talk about one thing. We're 35 minutes in. And like right here in this picture, it says automobile insurance coverage. I'm not trying to train children about the intricacies of a contract, but let me tell you, they are not all equal. And one thing you'll have to make a decision about as a child, as a teen, as a young adult, is how much auto insurance to get. And so right now, at your age, you're probably thinking, okay, if I have auto insurance, I'm good. I got insurance, right? No. There's state mandated minimum coverage, which is where Tennessee, I think in Tennessee, it's $25,000 in liability against harming another individual from your fault, and then $25,000 in property from harming someone else's property at your fault. That's the state minimum. I mean, I don't know about you, but $25,000 isn't going to go very far if you were in the passenger of that car. That could have been a serious injury that you caused and sent them to the hospital. So what happens? So let's give an example. So I'm driving, and it's winter, and I didn't take time to defrost my windshield because I'm in a hurry to get to work and I've got an important meeting. So what do? You kind of rub the window and you start driving. You're not supposed to do this. I'm not saying do this. I'm saying some people do. They cut a corner. They take a risk. They're just going to drive anyway. Well, what they didn't notice, because the sun was coming in, blinded them temporarily, there was a minivan backing out, and they slammed right into the side of it. So you get out to see if anyone's injured, ends up that there's some injuries involved. Do the police report, everyone goes about their business, ambulance comes, people taken off. Not to get graphic or anything, but just think of it. If you only had $25,000, which is the state minimum, you're not breaking the law. You have auto insurance, because it is a law, by the way. You have to have it to be a responsible citizen. But how responsible is it to have the absolute cheapest insurance you could possibly be driving with? Because what is the consequence for that? $25,000, that's all you have. Okay, well then you injured someone, their medical bills come back and it's $100,000. So where, if it's your fault and you only have 25, your insurance policy is going to pay $25,000. What's left? So $100,000 minus the insurance policy. You have insurance, $25,000. So you have $75,000 your insurance policy didn't cover. Well, who's going to pay that? You are. And guess what? If you don't have the money, they can sue you. A judgment can go against you. And then let's say you're working at Chick-fil-A, or you've got a job, one of your first jobs out of college, and you get paid every month. Well, the judge can put a garnish against your paycheck and say, well, you got the $75,000 that you owe from that accident. We're just going to take a little bit out until you pay the $75,000, whether you have it or not. They'll take it from you from your future earnings, or take it from you now through any cash that you may have. So not all insurance policies are equal. So I have, for me, I have $2.5 million of liability protection if I were to injure someone, if I were to go out and cause an accident. That's a lot more than most people have, but hey, this is what I do for a living. So I've seen some really nasty claims that have come back, and it can bankrupt someone. So not only were they paying for their auto insurance, but they still ended up filing bankruptcy because of an accident. Why? Because they didn't have enough. So what's enough? Well, state minimum, I'm going to pretty much tell you the state required insurance minimums are not enough. They're you're definitely playing with fire and taking a very serious risk, assuming that you're never going to have a serious car accident, that you're at fault. I mean, you want to hope that you're never going to be at fault for a serious accident, but it can happen, even if it's an accident and just circumstances happen. You trying to dodge a cat or a dog or a turtle out of the road, your good heart instincts, right? And then that could lead to something that you had no intention of doing. So yeah, auto insurance is very important to have it correct, have it right, but just know that they're not equal. And so you can definitely have a policy that really doesn't cover much of anything except for minor accidents and tickets, or minor accidents and minor accidents. So that's one thing I meant to mention earlier, but that's very important. In the beginning, you'll be tempted to get the cheapest possible policy you can. So you kind of have to set your mind, probably don't go for the cheapest. Try to go at least one step up and just spend the extra money. I think that would be very wise advice for you.
What happens if you're insured, but it's not your fault, and the other driver is uninsured, is driving illegally? What happens with who pays what?
So there's a part of the policy, that's an advanced question, very good. Uninsured motorist, underinsured motorist. So if I'm in the car and someone rear ends me, I have coverage on my policy. It doesn't matter if they're driving without a driver's license, if the car is stolen, if they don't have any insurance, or maybe they only have $25,000, like the example I just gave, and they did $100,000 of damage to me. So I had to go to the hospital. I got problems. My car is destroyed. My insurance policy protects me against people like that. It's called uninsured motorist, underinsured motorist. Same thing with property damage. So that is standard on the policy. There are insurance carriers, especially for teens, that will sell you an auto insurance policy and leave that off. The state does not require you to have that coverage. And I have seen more policies recently written that I've been coming across from younger drivers that don't even have uninsured motorists or property damage. So in that situation that you just asked about, you would have no coverage. Because if they don't have coverage for their responsibilities, you would have no coverage. The only thing you could do at that point is a civil suit or a lawsuit against them. And if they have, that could be too expensive. It may just be, you're just going to have to eat the cost associated with whatever they did against you. As unfair as it would be, that would happen. So the insurance policy that I always recommend to my clients covers exactly that scenario. That's a great question. But you can protect against that. There is protection for that.
I'm assuming.
You're asking all the questions. It sounds like you may be getting close to driving. Are you already driving, Katie?
I'm already driving. My dad got me life insurance and car insurance, auto insurance in August. So
okay.
I was
You got life
involved in
insurance
that,
too?
but not heavily involved.
No, it's awesome. It's great. So, yeah, have you had any close encounters with any accidents?
I have not, no.
That's good. The day will come, someone will do something stupid, and hopefully it's not you. And hopefully you're paying attention. And that's the other thing I can tell you guys is with all the distracted driving, is you got to be a little bit more aware of what the other people are doing. If you see they're kind of meandering a little bit ahead, you may not want to pass them until they get out of the way. I have a lot of times where I see someone that's like clearly going over the lane. It makes no sense. Why are they going over the lane? Oh, and then they jerk back. They started paying attention again. What were they doing? I have to assume they must have been texting or something. Well, I'm going to stay away from those cars. Those are little signs, If you see someone turning their head a lot, up ahead, maybe they're not using their turn signal. So they're about to move over real quick and they're in a hurry. So little things like that. But who's taken the class? Was that you, Katie? You took the class?
I did, yes.
Did you learn a lot?
I did. It was a very informative class, and it really made my anxiety about driving lessen a lot. My driver instructor's favorite motto to that class was "Drive like the rest of the world is idiots," because that way you can anticipate that they're gonna do exactly the wrong thing, and that way you can be prepared for that.
Yeah, it gets exhausting sometimes. If you're a really good driver in very trafficy areas, a lot of turns, a lot of stoplights, it can get pretty exhausting. I'm still the kid looking both ways, even as I'm going through a green light. A green light, it's my right. I can go, but I'm not going to assume that the other people are paying attention to their red light. So it's sad. But yeah, that's that can be an exhausting experience. But I'm telling you, the newer cars in the future coming out, they automatically stop. They keep people in the lanes. Hopefully that technology continues and that's helpful. So maybe the generation of driving that you're going to experience is going to be safer. I think it will. But until then, you can't let your guard down because actually it's more unsafe now. Is people are trusting some of those technologies, but they're not perfected. And so the person meandering over the lane, they have something in their car that has lane detection. Oops, they repainted some of the lines and the system didn't pick it up. And so boom, now they're off into a ditch. You can't trust technology beyond your common sense. You still have to use common sense when your cars have that. That's great, but don't rely on it. And I even think Elon Musk would suggest the same advice at this stage. So you even got life insurance, huh?
Yes, the person who manages our policy recommended it. They're me and then also one of my siblings.
Well, this is my life. So if there's anything you have a question about, I can answer if there's any other questions. I appreciate you guys taking this much interest in a topic that honestly isn't something a lot of people even want to think about. But it's fascinating. It's a great career too. If you're still waiting to figure out what kind of career you want to have. If you like owning your own business, it's good. It's a good career. You get to help a lot of people, and because all these policies are different, and there's a lot of I wouldn't call ignorance in a bad way, but people who just don't know. There's a lot of opportunity to really educate people and help them out. So that's what I enjoy about what I do with insurance, is trying to navigate the difficulties of this. And when you come to me, try to find that rate that's going to not break the bank for you and give you some guidance on that. So try to find good people that you want to partner with in your life insurance, health insurance, auto, home. Just try to find good professionals. And if your parents have good referrals, then they usually would know. That's going to be your first step. And when you go out on your own, don't just do everything online and think you got it figured out. There's a lot of people that'll scam you and give you really bad insurance, just trying to sell you because of the rate, not necessarily because of the proper coverage. You can really get insurance done wrong, which is an unfortunate thing when you're trying to trust other adults to do the right thing for you. Just be aware of that. Not all things are equal necessarily on these policies.
This is a question about health insurance. Is it harder to get health insurance if you have like a pre-existing condition? Like with my younger brother, he's type 1 diabetic. Would it be harder for him to get health insurance, or would it be more expensive than, say, my health insurance when I don't have a pre-existing condition?
There's two kinds of insurance right now that we're seeing. Well, three. If you're a certain age or situation, you can get like Medicaid or certain government assistance, which in that case, no, it wouldn't make any difference, but you have to qualify for that. The other kind is private insurance. Private insurance, which could be tied in with corporate, your group benefits. Most of that, since Obama came out with Affordable Care Act, made it illegal to discriminate against someone because of their prior existing conditions, so diabetes or any other kind of condition. So it's really, they don't discriminate for that anymore. They used to. There are some policies out there. I'm in one that's actually a religious-based health insurance concept, and it does discriminate for prior. So if you're very healthy, you can get that. And we save, 60% versus the traditional kind of health insurance by doing it that way. So remember the law of large numbers? So with the ACA, which is what they call it, Affordable Care Act, when they opened it up where all prior conditions and health problems were equal with anyone else who's healthy, the price, well, not really, because they raised the price to cover unhealthy, and then the healthy were lower. So it just raised it for the healthy people mainly. And there's arguments that that's good, that they did it that way to make it fair for everyone. That is a hot debated topic on the health insurance. I personally don't sell health insurance because it is a very confusing product. Anytime you try to get health insurance outside of your employer, if they don't provide it, and you go to shop health insurance, I have a specialist that's a good friend of mine. I send all my clients to that person because it's that complicated. Like, I prefer to work with a specialist that's all they do. That's how complicated that is. And to your general question, yes, in general, normally it would be more expensive, but there's a lot of legal protections that exist out there now to protect people like your brother who have pre-existing conditions. Your health insurance may be maxed out, like you may have to pay your whole deductible, which could be very expensive, or you may have to pay a lot for out-of-pocket drugs and things, because a lot of the times all these insurances have gaps. They're not going to cover everything completely to where you don't have any out-of-pocket. So another question related to that would be, how much more would you pay out-of-pocket for someone who has a pre-existing? You're probably going to pay more out-of-pocket because you're going to meet your deductibles. And deductible means how much you're responsible for. So the word deductible means how much you're responsible before the insurance policy picks up. A lot of times you're seeing with health insurance policies very high deductibles. individuals that have anywhere between $2,000 to, I've seen some as much as $20,000 deductible. And why would you go with a higher deductible? To lower the expense. Maybe you don't have a choice. Maybe that's all you can afford, so you end up having a high deductible. So if you have a high deductible, then someone with pre-existing conditions that are likely to continue to incur expenses annually, that is going to be more expensive. But the health insurance policy itself should be the same if it's governed under the ACA or what Obama set up with the Affordable Care Act. So hopefully that made sense. Good question.
No more questions, guys? We all good? All right.
Is that helpful? Okay, guys.
I think it was very helpful and very informative. Thank you so much for doing that. Greatly appreciate